Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
6:06 now on this Thursday morning in the nation's capital. Thanks for joining us. It's O'Connor and Company, getting you informed and maybe even a little entertained as you start your morning routine. It's Larry O'Connor alongside the effervescent Julie Gunlock. Julie, look who we got here coming up in 30 minutes. Abby Platt. She's a mom out of Loudoun County, and her daughter now has to shower with a boy on the volleyball team. We're very interested to hear her reaction to that. At 7:05, Victoria Coates out of Heritage Foundation, formerly the Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump. Then at 8:05, Representative Virginia Fox, love her. And at 8:35, Representative Bob Good. I mean, I don't love him, but I'm a big fan of his. And we'll leave it there. You would think on the face of it, two congressmen from Virginia. You got Bob Good, and then you got Virginia Fox. But Virginia Fox, strangely, not from Virginia.
That is confusing.
Just an FYI. Julie, we've got our good friend Kerry Picket. She is the senior congressional reporter for the Washington Times, and she's going to sort out this whole gavel thing. Kerry, for crying out loud, what's going on here? Scalise gets the nomination, then so he's going to be speaker, and then suddenly he's not going to be speaker because he doesn't have the votes. Now he's got to try to get the votes. Didn't they work this out before they emerged from their conclave? Kerry, figure it out. What's going on?
Jeez, Larry, you confused me with that whole Virginia Fox Bob Good thing.
Fair enough.
You threw me off right there.
All right.
But guys, look. All right, what happened was yesterday you had the Republicans who thought they were going to figure it out when they had their sort of internal party nomination between Steve Scalise of Louisiana and then you have Jim Jordan of Ohio. And unfortunately for Steve Scalise, he only got about 113 votes. And the whole point of this internal party election was to find out whether or not the Republicans could get at least 217 votes, which is necessary to get in order to have enough votes on the floor. So then they don't have to go through like 15 rounds,
Right.
which is what McCarthy went through back in January. And therein lies the problem. And what happened was they kind of sort of like handshake agreed ahead of time, being like, guys, let's keep on doing rounds and rounds and rounds ahead of time before we go to the floor. Well, that didn't happen yesterday. They said, hey, we got 113. Let's just finish it there, and then we'll go to the floor, and then we'll figure it out. Like, guys, we did that last time. And they decided against that last minute. They just walked out of the room. They said, yay, Steve Scalise, 113. And then all the Jordan people were like, whoa, hold on a second here. You left early, and that's where we are today.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about the secret ballot, too? There was something about a secret ballot, and what was that about?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what happened was in the first ballot, basically they have like there's a secret ballot where you have like a simple majority. Okay, right. And then you're going to have a second ballot where they were going to say, well, look, we're going to state who you ended up voting for. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that didn't happen. Okay, and that's why everyone is pretty much upset because then they figure, we can start targeting who you want to actually persuade to come over to your side.
Right.
But that's why they ended up leaving, and they say, okay, let's go to the floor. And unfortunately, because everything was cut short, now everyone is pretty much in chaos at this point.
All right, so there's 221 Republicans in the caucus. To get a majority of them, you need to get 110 and a half votes, right? And I'm guessing Lauren Boebert's the half vote because she's very short. But that's fine. I mean, he got 113 votes. That's a majority of Republicans. So why can't they be grown-ups and say, okay, we're going to go behind closed doors. We're going to do this vote. If somebody can get 50% plus one, they're the speaker. And we march out of here in unanimous fashion because it's the only one who can get 50% plus one. So they got the best shot. Right. Whoever gets it, even if it isn't your guy, you need to be on board and you follow that person. Why can't they do that? That makes sense.
Yeah, you would think so, Larry. But the problem is that you have certain factions still, because during their presentations yesterday, because you had Jordan and you had Scalise talking about their what they would actually their presentations were the day before. Yeah. That they would talk about what they would do with like the whole issue of the with the shutdown of a government, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Some of them said, you had Jordan who did a much better job of the shutdown of the government or the border. He had crisper answers, et cetera, et cetera. And some said that like maybe Scalise should probably take care of his health better, et cetera, et cetera. Some thought that maybe Jordan isn't as good of a fundraiser. So there's things like that are going on.
But here's the thing. It seems to me no one is going to appeal to every single issue that every single one of the other 220 Republicans want. That's just impossible. So you go with the consensus pick if you can. Otherwise you're never going to reach consensus. There's not ever one person who's going to be able to accommodate everyone. This whole idea of Kevin McCarthy emerging as a compromise, that's not happening, right?
No. I don't think we're ever going back there. Okay. That's not happening.
Well, but then you have members who say, but Scalise is just McCarthy number 2. So that, which is why some people are standing firm on Jordan.
Yeah. Some people think that, but here's the thing too, is also Jordan. I want you to keep this in mind. Jordan is telling people, guys, I don't want this. I am willing to nominate Mr. Scalise on the floor. Okay, I'm throwing my support behind Mr. Scalise. And once again, we are back to January.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So and no one's listening.
Kerry Picket, what about Matt Gaetz? He's the guy who sort of started all of this, along with
He's
7
for
other
Mr.
Republicans.
Scalise.
He's for Scalise.
He's for Scalise. So, like, you have some of the people who were the holdouts last time who are for Mr. Scalise, such as Matt Rosendale. He's for Mr. Scalise. But then again, you're going to have some people who are for Mr. Jordan, like Nancy Mace.
According to your...
She has said some... Go ahead,
sorry. Well, I was going to say, according to your article in the Washington Times, Chip Roy and Thomas Massey are not backing Scalise yet.
Right.
Correct. They weren't one of the 8 holdouts, but they are not backing Scalise. But then you have someone like Nancy Mace, who was one of those 8 Republicans who ousted McCarthy, and she has said some pretty nasty things about Mr. Scalise, and let's just say she better hope Mr. Scalise doesn't become Speaker of the House, because if he does, I can't imagine how things are going to go down there.
Looks like Nancy Mace is trying to run for the next open Senate seat, maybe. I don't know. What was with her wearing a big scarlet A yesterday?
Yeah, she's looking for a viral moment.
Yeah, referring there to Hawthorne's A Scarlet Letter.
Right.
So, that was sort of an interesting sort of moment there. She was wearing this, like, T-shirt, and I suppose she felt that she was being beaten up a bit for her vote to oust former Speaker McCarthy, and she felt like she was getting a lot of backlash for it. So
she has to wear a scarlet letter.
Moment there. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Based on where things are going right now, Kerry, real fast, will this get resolved today or no time soon?
No time soon necessarily. I spoke to Byron Donalds about that, Florida congressman, and he is saying, you know what, we need to get back into conference and settle this before we even get to the floor. That seems to be the consensus among Republicans. Don't bring this to the floor until we have 217 votes.
Kerry Picket, Washington Times, tracking all the drama there behind closed doors and sometimes in front of closed doors in Capitol Hill. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
It's 6:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the
WMAL. Making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Need a new roof? Honor, respect, and trust your home with Valor. Visit ValorHome.com. Later this morning on the Chris Plant Show, the world's bus is careening down the mountainside and Joe Biden's at the wheel. What will we do? 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Let's turn to President Biden making a forceful, clear, and unequivocal statement yesterday with regard to the... Boy, you know, it's times like this after these terror attacks in Israel where you really want forthright, clear, comprehensible leadership. So let's turn to Joe Biden and find out what we've got. Here he is yesterday talking about his message to the Iranians.
We're sending more fighter jets there in that region and made it clear to the Iranians, be careful. What are you doing to get these folks home? If I told you, I wouldn't be able to get them home. Folks, there's a lot we're doing.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So much for clear, cohesive, comprehensible messaging. Let's start with the message to the Iranians. I told the Iranians to be careful. Be careful. What does that mean exactly? Use a seatbelt?
Yeah.
Would it put on your snowshoes when going outside? What do you mean, be careful? Isn't it a little too late to tell the Iranians to be careful when we already know what they did to help plan, coordinate, and greenlight this?
How about you tell them you're out of money?
Yeah.
How about you tell them sanctions, refreezing the $6 billion, limiting your ability to sell oil? Like, why don't we do that? Why doesn't that would have been? Everybody's praising the statement, right?
Be careful.
Yeah, and he's just be careful.
Because up until now you've been right up to the line. Yeah,
hey, folks,
now you're treading thin.
Let me give you some advice. Raping women and then putting the videos on social media, not smart. Be careful, right? Hey, folks, be more careful. Don't behead babies. Like, what are you talking about?
Secondly, he was asked, what are you doing to bring Americans who were trapped in Israel back home? And he said, well, if I told you what we were doing, then we couldn't do it anymore.
Oh, he did more than that. He was like, the idea that I would share that with you. He was all...
Well, and of course, and how dare you even question whether we're doing our best efforts to get people home? Well, I'm sorry, but we've played this movie before in Afghanistan. You left Americans at home, and it took private entities and private organizations. And the last official word we heard from the Biden White House was buy yourself a commercial ticket when commercial airlines have shut down.
Great point.
And aren't flying in and out.
Yep.
So what we do know is that some independent people have, in fact, been some independent organizations and people, including Corey Mills, congressman of Florida, have basically said, screw it, you can't count on this administration to get people out. We saw this movie in Afghanistan. They hopped on a plane, and Corey Mills, congressman of Florida, have actually brought back a plane load of Americans single-handedly. Biden didn't do anything about that. We have no idea what the Biden administration has done.
Yeah, and it's really horrifying that you can't rely on America. But and you're right. It's so good that you brought up Afghanistan. I mean, they left families there. They left activists there. They left allies of the American soldiers that had worked for decades on the ground there. They left them. They abandoned them.
It's a far cry from what we had during the Trump administration. Coming up at 7:05, Victoria Coates, who is the Deputy National Security Advisor during that presidency, she's going to join us. Coming up, Karine Jean-Pierre will not call on reporters from the New York Post because, they've been telling the truth about the Biden crimes. The New York Post reporter, Stephen Nelson, yesterday was through with that, and you'll hear exactly how that went down in just a moment. The New York Post is one of the oldest newspapers in America still in circulation. It has the fourth largest national circulation, behind only USA Today, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. It's a pretty significant paper, and recently, of note, they've been incredibly critical of the Biden administration, including their expose on the Hunter Biden criminal activity found in the laptop, which the Biden campaign and eventually Biden presidency first said was fake, phony, and the results of Russian misinformation. And then, of course, it was determined to be absolutely 100% true. So the New York Post must be punished. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, has ignored the New York Post for months. And yesterday, things reached a head with their White House reporter, Stephen Nelson. Take a listen.
All right, you haven't called on me in 2 seasons, Karine.
And not calling on you today. Go ahead.
Go
ahead, sir.
You should be ashamed
Go
of
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
That shows
Go ahead.
disrespect to a free and independent
Go ahead.
media. It's a blacklist
I'm gonna
one of our
close.
country's largest and most widely read newspapers, Karine. That shows contempt for a free and independent press.
Go ahead. I'm calling on somebody who I haven't called in a long time as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, you should be
So
ashamed
she
of that,
admits it.
he says. Yeah, of course
She
she admits
admits
it.
it.
She's proud of it. That's the party line. Can you imagine Dick Nixon not calling on the Washington Post during the Watergate investigations? What the outrage would be?
I think it's also important to say that the smugness on her face,
Oh, yeah.
which you can't see on radio. If you look at Twitter, you look at this clip, she is so shameless in this and who she chooses to call on.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's getting less friendly in that room. Boy, it takes a lot. Okay.
Well, where are the other reporters
Yeah,
saying he's
but
right?
where are
I will defer to Stephen Nelson so that he can ask his question.
Right.
I will defer to the New York Post.
over and over again? That's what they should do. But
That's what they should do. The only problem is when he said you should be ashamed of that. Of course she's not. She's proud of it. There's no shame
Remember
there.
all those reporters that were appalled that the New York Post got suspended off Twitter? No, none.
None. Not at all. All right, coming up, you're going to hear from a Loudon mom whose daughter now has to shower with a boy. That's next.
WMAL-FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
6:36 now as we continue our very busy Thursday morning. Coming up at 7:05, Victoria Coates. She was the Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, now with Heritage Foundation. 8:05, Representative Virginia Fox, and then 8:35, Representative Bob Good of Virginia. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Let's get everybody up to speed real fast. If you have just joined us over the last couple of years or need to sort of get up to date on the events of Loudoun County, you'll remember Scott Smith, who just received a pardon from Glenn Youngkin. He was arrested at a school board meeting in June of 2021, was it? Good Lord. Has it been 2 years?
Yeah.
And he's just announced that he's suing the Loudoun school system for tens of millions of dollars. He was arrested at that school board meeting because he wanted to tell a story at the school board, to the school board and to parents about his daughter being sexually assaulted in a restroom by a boy identifying as a girl. They arrested him instead, cleared the room, and then voted to pass the gender bathroom, gender locker room policies. It was that night that was passed by the urging of the superintendent, Scott Ziegler, who subsequently has been indicted and convicted on charges of retaliating against a school teacher in that very same case, firing a teacher who wanted to tell the truth. So they had one guy, a citizen arrested. They had another teacher fired. But what you might not have paid attention to is that policy still stands. The school board has never come back and said, you know what, given all of this, we were wrong. We're going to reverse the school policy.
Right.
Even in light of Glenn Youngkin not only winning the governorship, but then putting out a brand new standard saying we can't have these policies anymore.
Right.
Which brings us to Abby Platt, a mother out in Loudoun County whose daughter is in high school. And Abby, thank you for joining us. I wanted to set all that up so you could tell your story and what your daughter is going through now. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I think people will be astounded to know how common this is. So my daughter is at a Western Loudoun school. She's an athlete. At the very beginning of the school year, she walked into the athletic locker room, and there was a boy in there. And she immediately took her backpack and she left. So a lot of these kids, I really don't think that people understand. A lot of these kids have been shamed into silence. They're putting up with it. They're letting it happen day after day. In fact, just yesterday at a cross-country meet, my daughter went in another school there for a meet. She went in, there's a boy in a girl's singlet and bulging muscles, makeup, long hair. It's happening. It's happening. If it's happening in Western Loudoun, it's happening across the county. No doubt.
Abby, we know that Loudoun has a mix of people, including the famous sort of Chardonnay Antifa type, and the moms who are sort of they're in the business of intimidating parents who speak out about this. Have you been contacted by other parents? Is there a group of parents that is concerned about this, or is there something? You mentioned the intimidation of the students. That's true. There's also intimidation of the parents by groups like this. Have you, what kind of reaction have you seen from other parents?
So I'll confess, I went to a school board forum on Sunday, and really part of the reason I finally said enough is enough, like my daughter has been trying to skirt this and get around it. I went to this school board forum at the Adams Center, and I sat with the most lovely women, and they were asking me, why are you here? Why today? Why in this place? And I said, I have a daughter, a high school daughter who's in this locker room, and there's a boy that has been coming in and out. And what people don't understand is by their own policy, a boy can, without question or without recourse, can walk in and out at any time. And this lovely woman said to me, really? And I said, yes. I said, I'm here at this school board forum because our children are in danger. And the entire school board is on the ballot. This has an impact, a daily impact on my family, on my children. She said to me, we have Mr. Mahedevi. He will protect us. And I said, I don't think that's right. He voted for this. So years ago, there was a strong group of parents that were connected and talking often. I think many people, my name was on that hit list. It does have a chilling effect. Parents are afraid. People have lost their jobs. But when it comes down to the fact that, and look, the situation that my daughter's in, I genuinely do not believe that particular student poses any harm to my daughter physically. But it is really uncomfortable for even as an adult. I don't want people watching me take off my clothes.
And first of all, the last thing that you should have to worry about as a mom is whether your daughter, to evaluate every biological male who's in the locker room with your daughter to see if they're a threat or not. You should be able to have the safety and security to know that you don't even have to raise the issue because it's only girls in the girls' room, number one. Number two, even if this individual doesn't pose a physical threat, I'm sorry, I am the parent of two young women. I was with them when they were in middle school and in high school. They should not have been exposed to naked male genitalia against their will, against their consent. That sort of should be a basic, that a young woman should not have to be exposed to male genitalia, even if the person with that male genitalia is identifying as a woman. So I guess I'd like to bring this back, and I appreciate you bringing up the other moms and the other school boards, but to your daughter and other daughters that might be in your child's case, I'm sure you have raised this with the school and the school system. What did the principal say? Because your daughter has rights too.
So they have offered to have her meet with a counselor, and they will find a separate place for her to change.
Oh,
yes,
unbelievable.
So your daughter needs counseling,
really
and she gets separated from her friends.
Yeah.
And her fellow women.
That's right. And let me just emphasize that their policy ensures that all students, they're entitled to have access to restrooms and locker rooms that are safe and comfortable to fully engage in their school programs and activities. So it is not comfortable and it is not safe. She will not be able to fully participate with her team if she is pulled away from them. They have put themselves in the most absurd corner. And why? Because they're letting children, without question or without recourse, do whatever they want.
Yeah, and
Sundays.
Go on.
Well, let me just say this, because Sunday, after that Adams Center, I left there thinking, this community thinks they have an ally, and they do not. Yeah. They have been led into a place they believe that he will help them. He won't. I left there. Within hours of that, I got a call from another mom, a friend of mine, who has a son at another school. He's on a football team. There's a girl on that boys' football team.
Hold that thought. I'm sorry, there's too much, and we got a tight schedule. We'll carry you over for another segment. That's okay. Hold the thought. Don't forget it, though, what you're going to say about a football team. 6:45, WMA. All right, we continue now. After all the drama with Scott Smith being arrested after the story of his daughter's sexual assault, Scott Ziegler being convicted for a retaliatory firing of a teacher over the gender policies in Loudoun County. That school board has never reversed the policy. It's still in place. And now we're speaking with Abby Platt, whose daughter was forced to undress in front of a biological male who was identifying as a girl. The school's response was to offer her counseling and separate her from her teammates so that she had to find another place to change. And Abby, you were just about to tell us about what you're hearing from a football team as well?
Yeah, so a friend of mine has a son on obviously a boys football team. There's a girl that is also on that team, and that girl is changing in the locker room in a thong. And
in a thong.
So this mom tells me, and I'm like, wait a minute, in a thong? These are young boys.
Right.
There's nothing about that this is okay.
I can hear the narrative now that if they look at her, if the football players, the male football players look at her, they're toxic male. You can and they need counseling. You can just sort of hear.
Well,
this.
they're just looking at another dude.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and our children have been shamed into silence.
Yes.
That's what that means. We're being held hostage by lunacy, and there is this chilling effect. Our children are afraid. Parents are afraid. So this mom calls me, and my mind is blown. My daughter is carefully protecting herself and stepping away from a situation that is terribly uncomfortable.
Right.
If that's happening at my daughter's school and my friend's son's school, these are two different schools, two different situations. And then at a cross-country meet yesterday in another school. I don't think parents have any idea what our children are being forced to put up with, and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I know. I hear you, Abby.
Enough is
well,
enough.
The good news is that every single member of the Loudoun County School Board is up for election right now. That includes Harris Mahadavi. And you're correct. If Muslim American parents believe that Harris has their back on this, look at his voting record and force him to answer the question. And it's fun. Abby Platt, thank you for telling your story, and our best to your family. And hang in there. Keep us updated, please.
Thank you so much. I will.
You know, Julie, anytime we raise this issue and we say, I'll tell you what, if a child is going through this gender transition, and I do have sympathy for that. I don't have sympathy in terms of them forcing themselves on other students. But if a child is going through this and they want to, identify as the opposite sex, how about they change in their own private space?
That's right.
Give them a private space where they can change so it doesn't disturb everybody else. And we're told, oh, you can't separate them, you can't other them,
but you
can't
separate,
remove them.
Yeah.
It's discriminatory. So then the one girl who stands
Who's
up and says,
brave
this
enough.
is making me uncomfortable, she gets separated.
Yes. Yes. And, this is really important. And I'm so glad Abby came on to tell us about this because we hear a lot about college sports. We hear a lot from Riley Gaines. We hear a lot from these brave, university students that recently in Norfolk stood up to complain about a male in their locker room and in their and competing against them. But we don't hear these sort of less highlighted stories about these girls in high school who have to endure this. Then they are told they're insane. They need the counseling. They need a separate space. Right. And meanwhile, so many are staying silent.
We'll stay on this story.